Some use words to bribe. Hey, David, go fight that guy. Think about what you'll get. That wasn't David's motivation at all, because we see that with the rest of the text. So some people are going to use words to bribe you. They're going to use words to constantly get you to follow the agenda of the world. Be careful about that agenda. Okay, we're in 1 Samuel 17. We are walking incredibly slowly through the story of David and Goliath. In fact, so slowly that we're still not going to kill the guy off today. He's going to stay alive for one more week, maybe two. I have a funny thing to tell you. So the title of the sermon this morning is The Truth About Words. That's the title of the sermon today. And it's funny because of the fact that I was in my office and I printed out my wife printed out the sermon for tonight and the outline for tonight. And I looked at the title for tonight, and tonight's title is The Truth About the Bible. So you're going to get a lot of truth today. The truth about words and the truth about the Bible. Apparently I was stuck on that word truth or something. But I want to tell you this. It's 9:46, and so we're a little later than normal because of baby dedications. And the funny thing that I laughed about is I looked at my sermon this morning again, and I have 10 points. I have 10 points, and I have less time to preach than normal. There's no way I'm getting through the 10 points. So this is probably going to be a 2-weeker, okay? I'm probably going to do the first half today and then the first half next week. We may get through it all. I don't know. If I just get to the sermon and stop talking, right? But I thought they were great stories. I thought you guys would be interested in. We're in this story of David and Goliath, and there's just so many truths that jump out to me about this story, and I don't really apologize for taking kind of a long time to walk through this. In fact, our banner is the story of David and Goliath, right? So I really was struck this week when thinking about this sermon and preparing for it about the difference in the language between how everybody else talked and how David talked. There's a great contrast in their language, and not just the words they use, but what they're saying. And it made me think a lot about this issue of what we say and the words that we use. And so that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. I wanted to show you the contrast between the two. Words, the Bible talks a lot about words. In fact, James talks about words, that the tongue uses it to talk about the tongue. The tongue is a small member, yet it controls our whole body. James chapter 3, I believe, is where he talks about that. And James compares it to a bit in the mouth of a horse. You have this big animal, and you have, though it's controlled by a little bit in the mouth of a horse, you have a huge ship. And it's controlled by a little, relative to the ship, a little rudder, and that really tells us a lot about the power of words. James also talks about how great a matter a little fire kindleth. So these massive fires, sometimes that we see out in California and in different parts of the country, a lot of times those are started by somebody that didn't put out a fire at their campsite, and so you have this little fire, and thousands and thousands of acres are being burned. And there's great truths there because, a rudder can, the mouth or your mouth, words can destroy what you have. They can devastate your life. They are very, very powerful. Words are powerful. They impact the direction of our future. And here in the text in 1 Samuel 17, we see really the words that people are using are indicating what's in their heart. And the reason why I wanted to point this out is because if you're anything like me, words are powerful to you. There's things that I remember that people said to me, both positive and negative, from my childhood. I remember things that people said. Words are incredibly powerful, and a lot of times they shape our lives, and we let other people's words a lot of times determine our destiny. And what I really want you to think about is I think David had a different perspective than all of us have. David heard words differently than we hear words. You know, I think we let words impact us so much. But David saw beyond just the words. And that's really what I want to do with this text, is to try to get you to see beyond the words that people say to you. Okay, so they say words, they say things to you. But what's really at the root of those words? And if you understand the root of the words, and you understand why they're saying it, it gives you a greater, kind of a better relationship with them. Like there's some people maybe that you won't even talk to anymore because of words that they've said to you. You didn't see beyond the words, you just heard the words. So what does this really teach us? All right, well, let's talk about these different guys. Okay, so David, you guys know the story. David is watching his father's sheep. He's been a harp player for Saul. He ends up, because of the battle with the Philistines, 3 of his brothers go to the battle. David then leaves the palace. He goes back and helps his dad with the sheep. And his dad says, hey, David, would you take some food to your brothers and check up on them and see how they're doing? I haven't heard anything from them for 40 days. So would you please go check up on them? So David goes to where his brothers are. He hears the Philistine talking. He says, why is somebody not doing something about this? And he's kind of barraged with these words, and people are saying stuff to him. And I want you to notice what people say to him, because it really reveals the heart of the people that are talking. The first one I want you to notice is found in verse 25. Now, I have all of these verses I do not have them in your notes, but I believe that they will be on the screen, okay? So I'm in 1 Samuel 17 if you just want to look at your copy of the Bible. But at verse number 25, so David shows up in the camp, and this is the words of the men of Israel. The men of Israel said this, have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. And it shall be that the man who kills the king will enrich with great riches, will give him his daughter, and give his father's house exemption from taxes. So I want you to notice the first thing. Some use words to bribe. Some use words to bribe. So what's the selling point? What is the thing that is on the mind of all of the men in the battle? What's on their mind? It is interesting to me that in 3,000, 3,500, 4,000 years, advertisement has not changed. Okay? Because the same 3 things that sold and that the human nature craves for is the same 3 things that we still talk about today. It was the same 3 things 4,000 years ago. What's going to happen to the man who kills the giant? He's going to be incredibly rich. He's going to have a woman that he's going to be married to that is entirely out of his league. And then he is going to, not only that, but he's going to have power because now he's going to be a part of the royal family. And is not this the human nature? Man craves money, sex, and power. And this is what Saul tries to sell his men on. If you will do this, you can have money, sex, and power. And nobody would do it because they saw Goliath. And my point is that what Saul's trying to do is he's trying to get them to focus on the physical. Now, I'm not saying that you should never make a decision based on money, but I'm going to tell you this. Making a decision solely for the purpose of money is a bad decision. And a lot of people do this. A lot of people will just speak to you in the physical. They'll just speak to you in the natural. They don't think about the spiritual at all. And I've seen this a lot just in life in general. Like I've seen people, I don't think it's wrong for somebody to ever leave this church and move away and get a different job. I don't think that's wrong at all. But I would tell you this, if I'm going to leave this church, I'm going to leave a church family that I have and I'm going to go somewhere else, I want to make sure that the town that I go to has a good Bible preaching church that exalts Jesus. But you watch people that'll uproot their family, they'll pull them out of a Bible preaching church, they'll move somewhere, they'll live in another location, there's no Bible preaching churches around. Because I'll hear it all the time, man, we just can't find a church like Topeka Baptist. So it's like, so you moved your family for some bucks? Just for dollars' sake? That seems like a really shallow reason to move. But people do it all the time. Well, I'm going to take this position. Now, I can't go to church anymore, but I get $1 more a raise an hour. So it's like money is what drives us. We make all these decisions, and this is what Saul's feeding on. David doesn't walk in and say, "Hey, man, what do I get?" He's like, somebody needs to shut that dude up. See, I can live my life based on purpose, or I can live my life based on money. What's your God? What drives you? Why do you do what you do? So if money is my God, and sex is my God, and power is my God, then I get up every day, and those are my driving forces. This determines every decision that I make, every direction that I go. It determines what I do. Will this lead to power? Will this lead to money? Will this lead to pleasure? And this is what drives a lot of people. And yet David doesn't live his life that way. So you've got to understand that you are surrounded by people in this world that is their thought. That's all they think about is what will give me money, what will give me better pleasure, and what will give me power. And so they're going to try to push that on you too. Hey, David, go fight that guy. Think about what you'll get. That wasn't David's motivation at all, because we see that with the rest of the text. So some people are going to use words to bribe you. They're going to use words to kind of constantly get you to follow the agenda of the world. Be careful about that agenda. So some use words to bribe. 2, some use words to discourage. Some use words to discourage. Okay, so David shows up, and what's David talking about? I'll fight him. I'll fight him. Now, he's got an older brother. Now, I know that, look, my brothers were here for our 20th anniversary, and I really genuinely mean this, that I have a great relationship with my brothers, and I always have. So I don't get sometimes the issues that people have with their family. I got in a fight with my brother one time, because my parents were gone. I was babysitting my brother, babysitting. I was older, they were older, and I did something I shouldn't have done, and my brother John said, "I'm telling Mom and Dad." And I'm like, "No, you're not." He's like, "Yes, I am." I'm like, "No, you're not." And we went to fisticuffs. And he told my parents. So, who got his tail kicked? Now I didn't get, he actually didn't strike back. He would not strike back at me. He was, John's so much like Jesus, and the older brother is not so much like Jesus, but anyway, but there's obviously tension here, Eliab, his older brother, when he hears what David's saying, what does the text say? He said, "Why do you come down here?" So he's speaking to David now. "Why do you come down here, and with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride and the insolence of your heart, for you have come down to see the battle." Some people are going to use words to discourage. There are people who are jealous of you. There are people that are angry with you. There are people that are bitter towards you. And they're going to use their words to try to discourage you. You need to understand that. David saw through the words. Eliab is jealous of David, and no doubt he got rejected, right? Because his dad thought if anybody's going to be the next king, it's going to be him. So he parades him up there, and Samuel goes, "Not the guy." How do you think Eliab took that? Well, I trust God. He's in complete control. No, he's angry about that, right? And then who gets picked? David, the least. And you can hear the other 7 brothers going, "David? Really?" So I think there was a certain degree of jealousy towards him. There was a certain bit of resentment towards him. And he had let that kind of build up in his heart. And this is why it's so important, folks. You don't let bitterness settle in your heart. Because let me tell you, it comes out of your mouth. You ever hear somebody talking and you're like, "Man, they're angry." What's happened to them? Bitterness has set in. They're bitter. They're resentful. They're holding unforgiveness. This is why Jesus so encouraged us to forgive. But what happens is when there is resentment, when there is bitterness, then when we speak to the person, when we speak to people, we don't speak encouragement, we speak discouragement. And so here's Eliab, he's just lashing out at his brother. People attack the messenger a lot of times. It's not, they're offended by the message, so they attack the messenger. And I think it's important for all of us to remember that hurt people hurt people. So if somebody's really being nasty to you, and if somebody's saying bitter stuff to you and resentful and hateful stuff to you, I think sometimes it's good for us to step back and go, okay, that person's dealing with something in their heart. Because I love how David responds. David says, what have I done? Is there not a cause? Okay, what would I have done? Oh, really? You want to go there, bro? I mean, he I would have probably overreacted and it had turned into this whole mess between me and my brother because of what he said. But I think David said, I haven't done anything wrong. Really, the issue's with you. You're the problem. If you're so angry at me, you're the problem. I'm not the problem. If I constantly want to put somebody down or put somebody in their place, it probably means I have a problem. The older I get, I've come to believe this. The older I get, the more that the issue is not with other people, the more the issues are with me. So if somebody's really pushing my buttons, man, it means there's something in my heart that's not right. Because I'm not supposed to let you control me. I'm supposed to let you make me so angry that I can't even deal with myself. The issue's with me. And so here's Eliab, he's just hateful. And this is why the Bible speaks so powerfully about reconciliation. If you have aught against your brother, go to your brother. Well, make things right, man. Truth is so important in any relationship. So who is it, man? You see them coming, you're just like, I don't like them. Okay? Go make things right with them. I found a lot of people do stuff against us they don't even know they've done. You ever looked at somebody, but they were in your line of sight and you were looking at somebody else? So then you waved at somebody else, and then that person's like, hey, and I'm like, oh, hey, I didn't even see you. We kind of go through life and do that. Like, we sometimes look right over people, and we don't, and then this person gets offended because then they're embarrassed because they realize, oh, they weren't waving at me. My point is that there's a lot of times we kind of go through life, and part of the problem is we kind of make everything about us. When the reality is everybody's thinking about themselves. So we're all kind of worried about us and what people think of us and this and that. You ever watch somebody trip? What do they immediately do? Look to see who was looking, right? We're very self-conscious. And I think we take everything so personal and look, and this is, I'm captain of the club, man. I'm the leader of the group. I'm the most sensitive dude I know. You think at 48 I'd finally get over stuff, right? Still wrestling with it, right? So constantly there has to be forgiveness. This is why I think forgiveness comes even if people never ask for it. I'll forgive them if they ask, but they better come with flowers and chocolates, right? And on their knees. You just need to understand that some people are going to come into your life and they're going to speak to you and they want to discourage you and they want to depress you and they want to attack you, and you can't let that ruin your life. And a lot of people do. A lot of people let others ruin their lives because of the words that they've said to them. And I get it, words are powerful. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Is that the stupidest thing you've ever heard? So we have to understand that some use words to discourage. So verse 33, you guys know what happens now. He ends up and he goes to Saul and he tells Saul, hey, Saul, I'm going to fight Goliath. And this is what Saul says. Saul said to David, verse 33, you are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him. In other words, you can't do it. So number 3, some use words to defeat. Some use words to defeat. Hey, I got this great idea. This is what I like to do. Well, you can't do that. I want you to remember this. Some people will try to defeat you because they are defeated themselves. I was told by more than one pastor in this town that when we started this church, that you can't build a church in Topeka. In fact, I was told this, there's enough churches here. Which I don't believe that. You can't build a church here. And what happens is like, and do you know that Topeka hasn't grown since the 60s? And my point is that there comes a point in all of our lives where it's like, because it's not working for me, doesn't mean it won't work for somebody else. But what happens is some people are just going to want to defeat you. They don't want you to do it and prove that they were wrong. People who are hopeless don't spread a lot of hope. And this is a problem. If your view of the future is bleak, then you got nothing to spread but despair, gloom, and agony on me. Right? And quoting the words of Hee-Haw. That's what, man, you get close to Jesus, Jesus gives you hope. Right? No matter how bleak it gets tomorrow, we have hope. So, but what's going to happen is you're going to have a lot of people, they just have this defeatist type. This is Saul. You can't beat that guy. He's been a man of war since his youth, and you're a child. You're a teen. You're an early teen. Can I challenge you, older generation? And I put myself squarely in that. I'm squarely in the middle age-ish. Right? I've thought a lot about how do I want to live. Okay, so God's given me 20 years. How do I want to live the next 20? Man, I want to live the next 20 helping the younger generation. That's what I want to do. I want to invest in them. I want to invest in that younger generation. I want to give them hope. I want to and give them encouragement. They are the future of the church, and they are the future of this body of Christ and the leaders in this body of Christ. And yet I don't want to speak defeat into them. Oh, man, you're in trouble. Do you know 1 in 10 millennials are walking away from there's just this defeatism. And this is Saul. It's just kind of defeated. Oh, you can't beat the giant. It's impossible. You can't reach the millennials. It's impossible. So you got to understand that a lot of times when people are telling you can't, it's because they can't. And if they can't, then they want you to not be able to do it either. Some use words of defeat. Number 4, I'm not even sure I'm going to get through these 5 points. Number 4, some use words to conform. So what happens? So Saul sees that David is not, this kid is not going to change his mind. He's going to fight this giant. So this is what he says. He goes, you take my armor and you use it. So Saul clothed David with his armor, and he put up a bronze helmet on his head. He also clothed him with a coat of mail. David fastened his sword to his armor and tried to walk, for he had not tested them. And David said to Saul, I cannot walk with these, for I have not tested them. So David took them off. You got to understand, a lot of times people want you to do what they're doing because people feel validation in numbers. So they want you to do it their way. Because if you do it their way, or you think their way, and there's a whole bunch of you thinking that way, then there's validation in that. So everybody's trying to pressure us into doing things their way. Here, wear this armor. This is how you do it. So some are going to use words to conform. I see this in church culture all the time. This is how you build a church. And you go to these, like I would go to conferences and I would walk away depressed because I'm like, that's not how I'm doing it. But I was told that this is the way. That you can't preach expositionally. You can't do that. Nobody wants to come hear that. I had a lunch with a young kid this week. He's in his mid-30s. And he's young. And doesn't really, I just asked him, I said, why are you in our church? Like, tell me why you're here. And he goes, look, I've been to a lot of churches in this town. I don't need another self-help sermon. I was like, okay. Good. Because we're trashing through 1 Samuel. So it just kind of encouraged me that, the point is like everybody I think wants to do the same thing. Like we got to be cutting edge, man. You know what? I love it kind of when Joe messes up every once in a while with his instruments. Because we want to do the best we can, but we're going to make mistakes. We're human. And let me tell you, when Joe messes up, we don't have a meeting on Monday morning going, bro, it better never happen again. Because this is the deal. Man, if I got corrected every time I messed up, it'd be a rough time. You got to understand that some people, they want you to conform to what is important to them. You do it this way. Fight this way, okay? The last thing is, some use words to intimidate. Some use words to intimidate. And this is the Philistine, right? This is Goliath. Now, this is interesting. Now, I want you, if you haven't been paying attention to me, listen to this, okay? So, David shows up, and he announces he's going to fight Goliath. And this is what Goliath says. Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said, come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the fields. 2 years ago, I read a book called David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell. Now, Malcolm Gladwell, I'm not sure is a believer, but he's an outside-the-box thinker. He wrote a book called Outliners. Fascinating book. And the reason why the book is fascinating is because every time you hear somebody talk about David and Goliath, we always talk about how David is the underdog and Goliath is the one that's supposed to win. And Malcolm Gladwell in his book David and Goliath makes the case that David was the one that Goliath was the underdog for a couple of reasons. One is that armies had three kinds of warriors. They had cavalry, which is people that rode in chariots and horses. Then you had basically infantry, foot soldiers wearing armor and carrying swords and shields. And then you had things called slingers. Slingers would be our snipers. And that's what David was. So a slinger had a leather pouch attached on two sides, by a long strand of rope. They would put a rock or a lead ball into the pouch, sling it around increasingly wider and faster, and then release one end of the rope, hurling the rock forward. Slinging took an extraordinary amount of skill and practice, but in experienced hands, the sling was a devastating weapon. Painting from medieval times showed slingers hitting birds in mid-flight. Irish slingers were said to be able to hit a coin as far away as they could see it. And the book of Judges, slingers are described as being accurate within a hair's breadth. An experienced slinger could kill or seriously injure a target at a distance of up to 200 yards. So a slinger basically is a guy that had a gun. Because they said that the speed of the rock coming out of the slinger's slingshot was the equivalent of coming out of a rifle. So let me ask you a question. Who's the favorite here? If I'm fighting you and you have a sword and I have a rifle, who's the favorite? Not you. David had as much, an historian wrote this, Goliath had as much chance against David as any Bronze Age warrior with a sword would have against an opponent armed with a .45 automatic pistol. Another thing is that Goliath had a serious medical condition. You know, we think of his size, but basically, a lot of people believe that Goliath had basically a tumor that was affecting his vision because of his size. He had a disease, and it would affect his sight. And that's why in the text, remember, it says, "You come at me with sticks." Well, David didn't have multiple sticks. He had one. But he was seeing double. And this is when he said, "Come to me." And the reason why he's saying come to me is because he couldn't see him. See, Goliath was great at fighting up close, like getting close and fighting up close. He could kill you there, but he couldn't handle a slinger. Because a slinger he couldn't see. He was mobile, he was quick. David's not wearing anything. I mean, he's wearing clothes, but he's not wearing armor. Remember, he tried it on, so he's like, I can't move with this stuff. The point being this, that Goliath was scared. And how do scared people talk? They try to intimidate you. His words reveal a fear of David. And this is why he spoke the way he spoke. He says, "Come to me and I'll give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." You come here, little boy. But that little boy was a slinger. And he knew he was a slinger, and he was scared. You know why people intimidate you? Because they're scared. You know why people get on message boards and they mock Christianity? Because they're scared. Because the reality of all of us is that we die. And what happens when we die? We face God. Nobody in the room can escape death. The most captive audience I always have is at a funeral. Because you're looking at a place that all of us are going. Right? But what happens, man? So I gotta deal with this issue of death. What happens after death? So if I don't agree with the position of the person that doesn't see it my way, then I have to intimidate them. So I get on message boards and I make a blog and I mock Christianity, or I write a book because I've determined that this is what happens after I die, and I want to shut up anybody that thinks differently than me. Like, I think as Christians, let's debate it. Let's talk about it. You shouldn't be scared of that. But what happened is, if you can always tell the person that's losing the argument because they're screaming the loudest. Right? You're losing. You're scared. So what do? You try to intimidate the person into your way. This is Goliath. So I got to remember, okay, this guy's saying really nasty stuff. What's he afraid of? You afraid of the truth? You'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. But a lot of people want to live in bondage. Just some things to remember when you talk to people this week, okay? You know why your boss probably yells at you? Because he's afraid he's going to lose his job. Oh, my boss is such a jerk. Yeah, he's got a lot of fears. A lot going on that you don't know nothing about. You don't know nothing about. Good English right there, huh? You don't know anything about. So remember this week. Some people are going to try to get you to always see things through the world's perspective. Hey, man, this woman over here thinks you're hot. But I'm a married guy. But isn't that the world? Doesn't the world say you ought to trade in what you got for something better? That's the world, right? What'll give me money, sex, power? Do whatever you got to do. The world's going to challenge you that way. Listen through spiritual ears, not through secular ears. What does it profit a man if he gains the whole world, but what? Loses his own soul. So some use words to bribe. Some use words that people are going to try to discourage you this week because they're angry at you. They have bitterness in their heart. There's a lot of bitter, angry people in the world. Don't let them ruin you. Don't let them change your course. Because some are going to use words to discourage. They hate you, they're miserable towards you, and they want to ruin your life, and they spew discouragement. Be careful. Don't let that drag you down. You're going to hear words this week, and they're going to be words of defeat. You can't do that. And a lot of times, words of defeat come from defeated people. Some are going to use words to try to conform you. They want you to see the world like they see it. Come on, man. Do it this way. They're trying to get you to conform. So there's more people that think like them, so they feel better about themselves. You know, as Christians, we're not really called to get a bunch of people to like us. We're called to do what's right. And then you're going to have people that are going to try to intimidate you this week. And a lot of it's because they have a lot of fears on the inside. So what the person that's trying to intimidate you doesn't need is for you to strike back at them. You responding in fear back doesn't help them. Don't let their intimidation deter you from what God wants you to do. Keep moving ahead. Okay? We'll pick up the rest next week. I do want to speak real fast to those of you that are here, and you are scared of death. We do have hope. Jesus Christ came to give us hope beyond the grave. So we're all going to die. We understand that. We accept that reality. And we're all going to stand before God. And Jesus Christ came to say, look, I died for your sins. I paid the punishment for your sins. If you'll believe in me, you can have everlasting life. So there's nothing to be afraid of with the future. Nothing to be afraid of with death. If you've never been here before, if you've never heard the gospel before, if you've never given your life to Christ, you've been here a long time maybe and not taken that step, today would be a great day. Take that step of faith.
Thank you again for listening to our series on 1 Samuel with Pastor Mark Doss. If you have questions about today's message, please contact our church office at info@topekabaptist.org. Give us a call at 785-862-0988 or check us out online at www.topekabaptist.org.